Hello, my name is Gaini. Welcome to another Booktopia lesson. To the Evening Star by William Blake. William Blake was a visionary, poet, painter, and printmaker, and he was considered as one of the most imaginative and creative artists of the Romantic era. He was born in London in 1757 into a working class family. Despite his lack of formal education, Blake showed a strong interest in art and religion from a young age, and he was largely self-taught. Though he was not a poet who strongly followed the Romantic movement, he was usually identified as a Romantic poet along with William Wordsworth and Samuel Coleridge. Through his poetry, he addressed themes like religion, corruption of the religious institutions, the poverty, the oppressed in the society, and nature. He published Songs of Innocence, which is considered as one of Blake's most important works, in 1789. The poems in this collection explore themes of childhood, nature, and spirituality. Songs of Experience was published in 1794 as a companion to the Songs of Innocence. This collection explores much darker themes like poverty, oppression, and the corrupting influence of social institutions. Both these collections were painted and hand-printed by William Blake himself. These are some of his well-known poems. Before we appreciate the poem, let's explore some important facts about the evening star. Evening star is also known under several names, such as planet Venus, light of the sky, wandering star, morning star, and shepherd star. We know that evening star is not a star, but a planet. It's the second planet from the sun, and it's the first star to appear in the sky after the sun sets and the last to disappear before the sun appears. This planet is named after the Roman goddess of love, beauty, desire, sexuality, fertility, and victory. Remember that in Greek mythology, goddess Aphrodite is the one who symbolizes love, beauty, and fertility. The poem To the Evening Star first appeared in 1783 in Blake's collection of poetry, Poetical Sketches. This poem is a lyric. A lyric is a poem where the writer expresses his or her emotions through the lines of poetry. This can be taken as a sonnet as well as an ode. In a sonnet, there are 14 lines. An ode is a lengthy poem where the writer appreciates a particular person or an object. Let's recite the poem before we explore the beauty of it. To the Evening Star by William Blake. Thou fair-haired angel of the evening, now, whilst the sun rests on the mountains, light thy bright torch of love. Thy radiant crown put on, and smile upon our evening bed. Smile on our loves, and while thou drawest the blue curtains of the sky, scatter thy silver dew on every flower that shuts its sweet eyes in timely sleep. Let thy west wind sleep on the lake, speak silence with thy glimmering eyes. and wash the dusk with silver. Soon, full soon, dost thou withdraw. Then the wolf rages wide, and then the lion glares through the dun forest. The fleeces of our flock are covered with thy sacred dew. Protect them with thine influence. Before you start listening to the explanation of the poem, you can pause the video and take down the meanings of the unfamiliar words. Thou fair-haired angel of the evening. In the very first line, the writer addresses the evening star, which has been compared to the goddess Venus. Here, thou means you. Fair-haired can be the color of the hair of the goddess Venus. This can be golden brown color. Or in modern English, we use a word blonde, blonde hair. Fair-haired angel of the evening. Now, whilst the sun rests on the mountains. Whilst means while. It's also an archaic English word. Now, the sun has already withdrawn from the evening sky and it's now resting on the mountains. So, sun rests. Here, sun is personified. Even in the very first line, the evening star is personified. Then the writer says, light thy bright torch of love. Thy bright torch of love. Here the writer has used a metaphor. Why don't you use your beacon of love to dispel the darkness of the environment? Now that it's the evening time, darkness is approaching. So the writer requests from the goddess Venus to dispel the darkness using the torch of love or the beacon of love. Thy radiant crown put on. Here the writer has used a technique called inversion. The word order is changed without saying put on thy radiant crown. The writer says thy radiant crown put on. And also here we can see the technique run on line. This line continues up to this one. So thy radiant crown put on. Please wear your, put on means wear your shining crown. Now remember, the evening star is being compared to the goddess Venus. And smile upon our evening bed. Then the writer asks goddess Venus to bless. Smile can be a blessing. So bless us who are on the evening bed. Now evening bed has two meanings. One is literal, the word meaning, and the other one metaphorical meaning. Here the literal meaning can be simply a bed that we used to sleep on. Now remember, it's the evening time. People on earth are now trying to get a break, trying to get a rest at the end of the day. And the other meaning can be, metaphorically, this is a reference to the whole earth. So it's not just people, but all the animals and the other living creatures on earth. They are getting ready to take a break or to rest at the end of the day. Smile on our loves. The writer once again asks the evening star to bless. Bless us. This can be a reference to maybe two lovers, right? Our loves can be maybe the act of making love. Remember, the goddess Venus is the goddess for love, beauty, sexuality, desire. And then the writer says, while thou drovest the blue curtains of the sky, bless us while you are droving here, drove. while you are drawing or while you draw the blue curtains of the sky. Now this is a reference to simply the blue sky, and it has been compared to a curtain, blue curtains of the sky. Then he asked to scatter the silver dew. Why don't you sprinkle? Thy means your. Silver dew is a reference to the mist or tiny drops of water. Sprinkle your drops of water on every flower that shuts its sweet eyes. Now here, now we know in the evening the flowers wither. In the morning the flowers bloom. So at the end of the day, now the flowers are dead. Without using the word wither, the writer simply says the flowers, they shut their sweet eyes. Sweet eyes, it's a reference to their petals. Why don't you sprinkle some drops of water on these flowers? And they are also getting ready to sleep. They are in timely sleep. They are already withered. So the writer, without using the verb wither, simply used this phrase, sweet eyes, shuts its sweet eyes. So sprinkle some drops of water on these flower petals. Let thy west wind sleep on the lake. Then the poet asked the goddess Venus to command the west wind. Now, the ancient people believed that the goddess Venus had the ability to control some forces of nature like wind. So, please ask the wind to sleep on the lake, to take a rest on the lake without it blowing into the land. If the wind blows to the land, it can be a disturbance for the people and the other animals who are now getting ready to take a rest in at night. So, thy here means you. Let your west wind sleep on. Please command your west wind to sleep on the lake. So, wind sleep, wind has been personified. Speak silence with thy glimmering eyes. Then speak silence, we know it's an technique called oxymoron. With thy glimmering eyes, your shining eyes. Now, the shining eyes, smiling eyes can be once again a blessing to the people. And wash the dusk with silver. Wash the dusk with silver can be the color that we can see in the night sky. If the sky is very clear, the silver color that we can see. And also if the sky is a starry night full of stars, once again the night sky can be of silver color. So wash the dusk with silver. Soon, full soon, dost thou withdraw. So the evening star is going to withdraw from the evening sky. Full here means very. Very soon you are going to withdraw from the sky, from the evening sky. Then what would happen? The wolf rages wide. The predatory animals like lion and wolves would come out of the forest, and they would rage as wide, glare through the dun forest. Glare through the dun forest, they would look at, or they would try to hunt down prey in the forest. So this can be a reference also to the evil forces in the society, all the negative or evil forces in the society. Wolf and lion can be symbol of the evil forces. Dun here is dark forest. The fleeces of our flocks. Now here fleeces is the woolly covering of the animals like sheep. Flocks can be a flock of sheep. So this can be a biblical allusion, the reference to the Bible. Why? According to the Bible, he who leads and teaches is called a shepherd, and those who are led and taught are called the flock. Simply, the followers of Jesus Christ are considered as the flock. So, the writer simply request the goddess Venus to bless these people, the followers of the messenger of God, and to protect them using your sacred dew, means it's a reference to holy water. Simply the mist or the drops of water, it's a reference to the holy water. Protect them with thine influence. So the very last line of the poem is like a prayer. We know the very devout Catholics or Christians, they usually pray before they go to sleep. So it's like a prayer at the end of the poem. Why don't you use your divine influence to protect the people on earth? Thine here means your. If you need a thorough understanding of the poem, you can pause this video and read the paraphrase of the poem. Now let's discuss the themes and the techniques of the poem. The very first theme of the poem is glorification of nature. Blake glorifies nature by portraying a beautiful picture of a countryside at night. While painting a breathtaking picture of the evening star, he uses other aspects of nature like the sun, the mountains, the sky, the stars, the wind, the flower petals, and even the tiny drops of water. Another theme is duality of nature. It is clear that he brings out both the beauty and the brutality of nature. While describing the nocturnal beauty, he talks about the predatory animals like lion and tiger to suggest threats of nature. Another theme is how nature inspires poets. It's quite clear William Blake was inspired by the beauty of the evening star. That's why he wrote the poem To the Evening Star. Another important theme is transience of life. Everything changes. That's the universal law. And not just human life, but all the elements of nature change with the time. The flowers that bloom in the morning wither away in the evening. All the celestial bodies that beautify the night sky disappear in the morning. The poem ends like a prayer, and Blake expresses the human need to find solace in the idea of a higher power or a divine power that provides comfort and guidance. Therefore, we can take human need for spiritual connection as another theme in the poem. The poem has a structure of a sonnet and as well as an ode. Since there are 14 lines, we can say that this is a sonnet, but remember that we do not find a regular rhyme scheme that we find in Shakespearean or Petrarchan sonnets in this poem. And we can call this as an ode. Here the writer addresses the evening star. The other technique is metaphor. Now, what are the metaphors the writer has used here? A bright torch of love. This is a metaphor. And thy radiant crown, that is also a metaphor. And evening bed, I hope you remember, I explained two meanings for this one, literal and metaphorical one. So if you take the metaphorical meaning. Evening bed is a metaphor for the whole earth. Then blue curtains of the sky. This is also a metaphor. Then what about personifications? Here in the very first line, the writer personifies the evening star. How does he do that? By comparing the evening star to the goddess Venus. And then by using the archaic language words like thy, thou, thine, he personifies the evening star. And it's not just that, even the other elements of nature like the sun rests on the mountain. Then the flower petals, the flowers, shuts its sweet eyes. Using this phrase, the writer personifies the flowers as well. Even the wind, let thy west, it should be wind here, wind sleep on the lake. So most of the elements of nature mentioned in the poem are personified. Then the other technique is exalted or formal diction. When the writers want to apply godlike qualities or respect to the subject that they address, they usually use archaic language or the Old English words. Here the words like thou, thy, drovest, once again here thy, and even the word done. These are the words that we find in Old English or archaic English. Then the other technique is symbolism. The writer here, in the last part of the poem, he uses two symbols, wolf and lion. In the explanation, I mentioned this can be symbolic of the evil forces in the society or evil qualities of humans as well. Then the other technique is visual imagery. From the first line to the very last line, the writer tries to portray a beautiful picture of a countryside in the night time. He simply portrays the nocturnal beauty simply by describing the elements of nature, including his subject, the evening star. Then what about these sound devices, alliteration, assonance and consonance? Alliteration is a repetition of consonant sound in the beginning of a word in a line of poetry. So what are the examples for alliteration? Examples for alliteration. The very first thing can be taken as west wind and scatter thy silver dew. Here, sound, silver dew. Another example, fleeces of our flocks, first sound is repeated. And also here, wolf rages wide, sound is repeated. Them with thine influence, the sound is repeated. So there are lots of examples for alliterations. Then what about assonance? In the very first line, fair-haired angel, a sound is repeated there. Assonance means the repetition of vowel sound in a line of poetry. Then thy bright radiant, thy bright, it's a diphthong, it's repeated in this line. And then upon our evening bed, a sound upon our evening bed. Then for consonants, whilst the sun rests on the mountain, S sound is repeated. It does not have to be in the beginning of the word. It can be in the middle or at the end. So, sun rests on the mountains. It's a nice example for consonants. Then even the curtains of the sky, blue curtains of the sky, S sound is repeated. So those are the example for sound devices. Then run-on lines. Run-on lines is when line continues up to the next one. Good example is scatter thy silver dew on every flower. This line continues up to this one. Even this one, let thy west wind, it should be west wind, sleep on the lake. This line continues up to this one. Thy radiant crown put on. It's also an example for run-on lines. And at the same time, it's a nice example for inversion. Thy radiant crown put on is an example for inversion because the writer has changed the word order. Then oxymoron. Nice example, speak silence. Two words with two different or two opposite meanings combined to get a nice idea. Speak silence. Here the S sound is repeated, so it's a sibilance as well. It simply connotes a hush tone. When there's a sound in a poem, it connotes a hush tone in the poem. Then apostrophe, the very first line in the poem is an example for apostrophe. The writer addresses the evening star. Then the very last technique used by the writer is euphemism. Euphemism is when the writers try to reduce the gravity of a word. They do not use harsh words. Now, for example, here, without using the word wither, he simply uses the word shuts its sweet eyes. Simply, he has used a mild word, shutting its sweet eyes, without using the word wither. Wither simply connotes a negative idea. Right, so these are the techniques employed by the writer William Blake in his poem To the Evening Star. And that brings us to the end of today's session on Booktopia Lessons. I hope you found it informative and educational. Thank you so much for tuning in. See you in the next lesson.